Empathy is a cognitive process where we engage in identification. That is, we take in part of who the other person is, and we can actually experience their feelings, thoughts, and attitudes vicariously through their explanations of them when we engage in empathy. And empathy should not be confused with sympathy, which to a lesser degree engages us in just caring and support and concern and compassion for the other individual, but we don't necessarily vicariously live those experiences through them. There are different approaches to communicating empathy. The first two really take on that whole embodiment of vicariously living out those experiences, whereas the third one is more of a sympathetic response. So first, we have empathic responsiveness. And empathic responsiveness is really what we would label a paralleled emotional response. That is, when someone else is experiencing sorrow, we also experience sorrow. So a friend comes to you, they lost maybe a really close family member. And as they're crying and talking through this loss to you and how much they miss them, you're crying through this with them, and you are missing the other person too for them because you are so enthralled in their experience. And when you have people that have very close, intimate bonds, so especially very close friends, very close family members, romantic relationships, it's not uncommon when the other person experiences an emotion for then the other relational partner to also experience that emotion. The second approach to empathy is perspective taking. That is placing yourself in the other person's life world. That is thinking about their life situation, thinking about what they've gone through, thinking about what their experiences are, their culture, their values, their beliefs, their family situation, their friend network, their educational experiences, taking all that in, who they are, and trying to figure out based on who they are, what they're feeling, and kind of placing yourself in those shoes. The problem with just thinking about placing yourself in another person's shoes is all you're doing is changing shoes, right? And that doesn't really do you any good. If you're going to place yourself in someone else's shoes to be really taking their perspective, you have to think about who they are, their entire identity, and how they're reacting in that situation, not how you would react in their situation, because you have a totally different set of experiences in life, and you may even have different values. I mean, you're a different person. So you really have to think about them and where they're coming from. Then thirdly, you have sympathetic responsiveness, and this is showing concern and compassion for another person. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, with those sorts of definitions, I can really see that if someone's showing me empathy in the first two approaches, they really care. But if they're just showing me sympathy, are they really caring for me? Well, let's take a step back. It's not always appropriate to go to the extent of parallel emotional responses or perspective taking maybe. For example, you have a classmate that comes in that's just frustrated because they realize they have a test next class time and they haven't looked at their syllabus. Well, does that really require of you to show that acquaintance a parallel emotional response or to take their perspective? Probably just showing some concern like, sorry you didn't read that ahead of time, or sorry you forgot about that. That probably does the trick, right? Because of the type of relationship that you have and because of the context that you're in. And you have to consider that as you select your approach to empathy. But the whole idea here is that you would be more intentional about how you show empathy and sympathy to other people. And you'd think about the decisions that you're making in terms of the messages that you're sending them. Emotional support is quite complicated, and we're going to be talking about how we can show comfort and support for other people, including showing them how we care about them through our behavioral choices and through our verbalized statements, whether it's approving of the positive feelings that they have or giving comfort during an expression of negative feelings. But you have to understand how to word your messages in a way that can be effective for them and not violate some of what we would say the norms are for showing support, and actually then become very ineffective in the way you show support to them. Effective supportive messages really begin with showing the other person that you care about the relationship that you're in and that they understand that you're there to help, that you're not there to judge them or basically say that what they're doing is wrong or that they should have done something differently. If you aim that you're there to help them and that you care about them, that affirms the relationship right up front. Also, you express acceptance for who they are, not necessarily for all their actions or for everything that they're saying, but just who they are. And then you demonstrate that you care about them through your words and nonverbal behavior. Show them that you're there, that you're available to them. And if you're not available at that given moment, because maybe you do have a responsibility, then make a plan to meet with them later. So that way they know that you do care through the time that you're willing to sacrifice and give to them. Also, you communicate that you have an alliance or that you're an ally to them, even if you don't agree with everything that they do or say. It's always wonderful to know that you have someone who's basically kind of got your back, right? They may not be on your side and everything, but they have your back. They're willing to be there for you, to listen to you, to care about you. You also acknowledge their feelings and their situation and how they're responding in that situation. This is a really good time to engage in perception checking and paraphrasing in order to make sure that you understand what those feelings are. You assure them that their feelings are legitimate, that they have a right to feel that way. You may not feel the same way in a given circumstance, but they have the right to feel that way. And you encourage them to elaborate more on what they're going through and what they're facing. And this is how you can begin to engage in positive and effective support messages.